because this will be, I think, my last time giving a message from this place on a Sunday morning to you, and that for some of us, at least, we'll be able to share the same space. And that's going to be wonderful to actually see you, and to maybe, I haven't given a hug to anyone who's not living in my home in a long time. So I'm taking reservations currently. So please put that in the chat below. I want to talk to you today about story to begin, because story is at the center of being human. Story really matters to us. We don't realize it, but that we are moved by story. We are propelled by story. We have our imaginations awakened by a great story. And if you think about it, our social media profiles and timelines where we spend so much time, they're really curated collections of our own and of other people's stories that we get to live inside and visit and be a part of. And when we meet someone for the first time, one of the most exciting and yet difficult tasks is catching them up on our story so far. We have to help them know where we grew up and what we've seen and what we've done. And when we enter into relationship with people of any kind, they become part of our story, and we develop something that's really powerful. We develop a shared story together. And because what story does is it binds us to other people, right? It reminds us of our commonalities, and it allows us to really participate in events that we were not present for. You often heard someone say, oh, let me tell you the story about a time when and you listen, and that helps you be part of something that you were not part of, or witness something that you didn't witness firsthand. And if you were present for an event, what's really great is you get to celebrate that connection through story retelling, right? Remember that time that some of the richest times in my life, I realize, are sitting with my family or my longtime friends and retelling stories that we've retold hundreds of times, and yet they're even more powerful because we get to remind ourselves of what we've been through together. And when you think about it, our nation has a connected story. Our faith traditions are built on a shared story. Our families are a legacy of one long interconnected story. And this community that we're a part of, this community has a shared story. I mean, the reason that we go to the movies, or that we read a book, or we look at artwork, or listen to music, is to see something of ourselves reflected back at us, to feel connected to other people, to find affinity in the experience of being human. And the reason that we create, the reason that we express ourselves, the reason that we communicate anything, is to make that kind of connection in the opposite direction, to say to the world around us, here is my story. And knowing that we are a part of a shared story is often what tethers us to hope when difficult times come. That shared story is called community, and community is the antidote to one of the greatest sicknesses that we have here, and that sickness is loneliness. See, we're all always fighting the feeling that we're alone in our worries, that we're alone in our values, that we're alone in our fears. We often feel like we are the last of an endangered species, that no one feels what we feel, that no one cares about what we care about. And especially when we're surrounded by so much discord and so many opposing opinions and so much tribalism. And most of us, we wade into crowds of strangers every day on social media, hoping to find people who see something that we see, people who are outraged by something that we're outraged by, someone who is asking the same question that we're asking, because ultimately we want to know, I'm not alone and I'm not crazy. And if I am crazy, I'm in really good company. And I may have told you a story about an interaction I had years ago. I was beginning my time as a student pastor at this really large church in Charlotte. And I really wanted to make a good impression. And we were having this giant gathering with hundreds of students and their parents. And I was working the room, and I was trying to do what I call hummingbirding, just flying around and saying hello to people. And there were two students kind of in the back of the room with their arms folded, and they really looked like they didn't want to be there. And so I went up and I started trying to have a conversation and trying to tell them what we were offering at this event and all the fun stuff we were going to do for the year. And I was getting no response. They were really just not pleased with my presence. And so I spent a few more minutes trying to talk with them, and then I left, and got an email a couple of days later from the older of the two students, the girl, the sister. And she said, I just wanted to let you know that, we appreciate you coming and talking to us, because we didn't want to be there, and we had a really bad experience with church, with organized religion. And she said, it really seemed like you cared about our answers, that you really wanted to talk to us. And she said, that made me feel important. And she said, it made me feel visible, and I rarely feel visible. And that idea of feeling visible was so powerful to me that I tried to spend the remainder of my life ever since then trying to help people feel visible. And I imagine part of the reason that you're here at Peace Fellowship is that you wanted to be in a community of like-hearted people. You wanted to gather with human beings who care about the world in the ways that you do. I imagine it's a help to know that you have your people, that you are visible. And I want us to celebrate that, and to remember that not everyone feels visible, that not everyone feels seen, that not everyone believes that they have their people. We often use a derogatory term about communities. We call it the echo chamber, right? Sometimes people say, we don't want to be in an echo chamber, because then you're just hearing opinions that are like your own. But I want us to rethink that idea of the echo chamber just a little bit today, because I think often an echo chamber is just a collection of people who make us feel seen and heard and known, and give us respite from the places and the people who don't. And see, the myth about the echo chamber is that we're just trying to hide from the truth in them, right? But that isn't accurate. We're not here physically or virtually to eliminate differences of opinion or to silence opposing voices, because we know those exist and we engage them all the time. We usually don't have a lack of dissenting voices in our lives, and we can't get away from oppositional ideas. But in our echo chambers, which I'll call our tribes of affinity, with a place like this community, what we're looking for is rest. We're looking for encouragement and for validation, and we're looking for people who get us, because when people get us, the other stuff is a lot easier to endure. And I think what's been so difficult about the last year that we've been through is that the shutdowns and the restrictions, they just exacerbated a problem that was already present in most of our lives to some degree. We all felt disconnection with people. And what's happened is that we have seen the pandemic introduce geographic distance in addition to the emotional distance. So we couldn't even share the same space, and that's been costly for many of us. And I think we have an epidemic of loneliness out in the world, which is why story sharing, why community building is so critical, because loneliness is often at the heart of despair, and stories make us feel less alone, and community makes us feel less alone. That's its main gift. And one of the goals of empathetic human beings like us is that the genuine desire to make people feel less alone. What we know about human beings is that they want to be known, they want to be heard. I do, and you do, and here's the secret: so do the people that you don't like. So do the people that we despise. So do the people whose politics make our blood boil. So do the people who join cults of personality that damage even themselves. There are 2.7 billion people here on this planet, and we're all terrified of being alone. And I think today that's a recurring truth that I want you to hold on to, that no one is immune from the side effects of being human. As uncaring as they seem, as insensitive as we think they are, as callous as they might appear from the outside, they are all fighting the fear of being alone. And this is important because for the past 4.5 years, we've been trying to understand the motivations of people who have embraced such a vicious and ugly movement that seems to have no redeeming qualities, but to them it does have one redeeming quality. They feel part of something. It gives them a sense of identity. That red hat or that slogan on their bumper sticker or that figure that they look up to for some reason, that gives them a place to feel like they belong. And all cults leverage loneliness by giving people acceptance or the appearance of acceptance. And people's desire for belonging is so strong that they can be convinced to do all kinds of things to hold on to that sense of belonging. I was talking to a coworker last week. Well, technically it was someone I was arguing with on Twitter, but my work is my work, right? And he described himself as part of the silent majority, which I thought was ironic because he was neither silent and he's not part of the majority, but he assured me that the election was fraudulent, and his evidence was in the lack of merchandise. He said, nobody likes this president. I still see Trump flags and hats and tattoos everywhere around town, but I don't see Joe Biden's face anywhere. And I said, well, you're not going to, because he's a politician that we voted for, but he is not a messiah or a cult leader for us. I don't find my identity through the president or through his party or through something so small. And I think that's important for us to realize that gap in so many people's lives is easily filled by something that is toxic. And that's important because we get to fill that gap with something that is beautiful. We get to fill it with genuine, diverse community. I knew a youth leader long ago, and she said, if you want people to feel significant, give them something significant to be part of. Create something that gives them meaning and makes them see their value, and they'll respond. And what I love about who we are as a people, or who we at least aspire to be, is that we can create that genuine community with people. We can give them something significant to be part of, and it's not fake, and it's not dangerous, and there's no agenda other than making people feel less alone. And what we've seen in the movement in our country that we have kind of pushed back against is that it gave people significance, even if that significance was defined by exclusion and supremacy and violence. And we have all been injured by this sort of polluted sense of community. And see, we're in a tough spot because we all want to be known. You know, that's not the difficult part. The difficult part is being known happens in relationship with other people. It's really difficult. It's almost impossible to experience the greatest parts of our humanity outside of the space of real, messy, costly relationships. This is sort of the catch-22 of being human. You know, silence and solitude in nature, they're all restorative, right? They're all productive for a time, but ultimately, we require other people to practice our humanity. I'm an Olympic level introvert, but I know that's not sustainable. You know, I like to go to the beach to get away from time to time, and I'll go and do some writing and reflecting. And what happens is I get to the beach and I'm alone, and I think I'm relieved to be alone. But what starts to happen is I see or experience things that I can't wait to share with other people, or I wish I could. So I'll see the sunset and say, oh my gosh, I wish my wife would be here. I take a picture of it. Or I see some turtles and I say, oh, my kids would love to see this. And so what I realize is, even though I thought I wanted to be alone, I'm pulling people back in so that I can experience this aloneness with someone else. And so much of our humanity is predicated on that connection with other people. Compassion is beautiful, but it needs another person's pain to invest in and move toward. Or generosity, it requires a needy recipient to be extended to and shared with. Generosity, kindness is best delivered to another human being when you recognize their need for kindness. Or even something like humor. Humor is magnified when it's shared laughter with a like-hearted soul, right? Funny stuff is funnier when there's other people around to laugh alongside you. And so our gifts and our abilities are by nature meant to be participatory, and so are we. And that's beautiful. But the problem is it's in relationship with other people. It's in community that we face the greatest injury. It's often the source of our most profound pain and our deepest grief. I worked retail for many years, and I used to say, retail, this retail job would be great if it wasn't for all the customers messing it up. And that's the problem. See, every interaction with another human being contains both the possibility for connection and the potential for injury. And I imagine in your story, you've been injured by people. And I bet you're here because you've experienced that grief. You've experienced a relational fracture or a disconnection, or you're here because you feel that not rightness in the world, and you know that people are the source of that. And it's not just generally speaking, but specifically speaking. So you are grieving people, even as you seek people, even as you desire community, you see the damage it does. And what a sort of story-based, empathetic, compassion-centered life acknowledges is the universal suffering out there. And it makes that suffering central. So we see behavior, and we confront words and actions, and we debate opinions, and we call out injustices as we live, but we understand that there is an invisible place of origin of those visible things that we need to consider. And so some questions as we engage with the world and the places where we see anger, we have to ask ourselves, what might these people be grieving? What do they feel that they're losing? How does loneliness motivate them? And where do they get a sense of identity that's actually damaging them? And how can we be a different presence for them in the world? You know, it's all about being known. Most of us drive past a house, right? We see the house from the road. We look at the exterior from a distance. We look at the way it's decorated, how the landscaping is maintained, or the stuff in the yard, and we try to get a feel for who's inside that house. And yes, those external things do tell us something about the people who live there, but to really get a clear picture, we need to get closer. We need to go inside the house, right, to really know who's there. But that's not enough either, because even if we're in the house with them, we still need something else to be sure we know them. We need to talk to them. We need to ask them questions to be students of their story. And so I think our compassion as a community begins to understand all those stories that we can interact with and pull people into a shared story that is going to help give them a real, true, and beautiful identity. So today, be mindful of the epidemic of loneliness out there and the fact that no one is immune to the painful collateral damage of being human. And remember that sharing stories is critical, because stories make us feel less alone. And that loneliness is one of the fundamental sources of wounding out there. And remember that the grief experienced in relational disconnection, it's happening all around us. And so think about the part loneliness plays in the people that you struggle to love or even to like. And as importantly, I guess, think about the part loneliness plays in how you respond to the world and to the relational fractures that you're experiencing, and the story that you tell yourself about your worth. Everyone around you is terrified of being alone, but the great thing is we get to experience that fear of loneliness together. And so that's what I'm hoping today, that as we begin to enter the world again, that we will think about the ways this community can help people find a beautiful identity and a place of belonging. And that we'll all begin to remind ourselves as we gather that everyone around us, everyone we see, has the same desire to be known and to be loved. And that's what we get to do, to give people that.